Hey guys, how you doing? Eric at SoCal Cigars here. So it's been a minute since I made a video. I apologize about that. It's been kind of crazy lately, but kind of crazy in a good way. We've been doing some traveling. We bought a new travel trailer and a new truck. And so we've been going around doing some camping locally in preparation for driving out to Missouri, which we did. If you've watched my channel for a while now, you know I go to Missouri every year to visit my family. And this year we actually drove the travel trailer out. So it was like 3 days out. We spent 2 weeks there and 3 days back. So that's been a lot of fun. When I was there, though, we talked a lot about cigars. I do all my cousins, they all smoke cigars. So we do a lot of smoking and gathering and hanging out and having fun. But topics come up of maybe what they would like to see videos on. And I mean, things came up like even like fishing and cigars, because we do a lot of fishing while we're there. Maybe hunting and cigars, maybe, there's all sorts of stuff that comes up. And on the drive back, everyone was sleeping. I was driving because, I'm putting in sometimes 10, 12 hours a day driving. I got time to think. And so one thing I thought about was, the way I've always presented this channel for the new cigar smoker is kind of from the front end of, here's how you do this, here's how you do this. I kind of thought it'd be a good idea maybe to run through a list of kind of watch outs, or like instead of from the front, maybe go from the other end and say, here's what I see that you shouldn't do, rather than always just showing you videos of here's how you do this. I think those are helpful too, but I think putting together maybe a comprehensive list of the real easy watch outs for the new cigar smoker might be kind of handy. So that's what I decided to do. You see, I have a little mascot today. One of my dogs has decided to join us on the video. So welcome, Ingo. You will have to sign a model release form though. So what I did, as I usually do, is I made a list. And what I will do is I'm going to go through the list and like I said, I kind of came up with the top 10. I kind of called it top 10 noob mistakes. I'm not sure they're mistakes. I think what they are more is mistakes I don't want to see you make. So first things first is I'm going to start with number one, and then we'll get into actually lighting and smoking too. But so the first thing I listed was too expensive. In a way, start cheap. If you're a new cigar smoker, your palate is not developed enough to really, let's say, appreciate a really expensive cigar. And that's not like a negative thing, and it's not like a slam. It's more like don't waste the money. You definitely want to get a reasonably priced cigar that's a decent cigar, but it doesn't need to break the bank. And I've seen people go out and they'll, especially when people recommend them, they'll say, oh yeah, you've got to get this Opus X, whatever, and you're like spending $30 on a cigar. You're not going to really taste all the nuances and flavors that are going to come out of that. You're not experiencing retrohaling. You're really, in my opinion, wasting your money in the beginning if you're going to buy expensive cigars. I would definitely buy good cigars, but I wouldn't spend a lot of money on them yet. I would, you got to get into it a little bit. You got to start to understand the smoking process, how to smoke, the proper way to do things. Like we're going to talk about some of those things here. Retrohaling, because that's where you're starting to really get all the nuances of a cigar. Because to be honest with you, in the very beginning, they probably almost all taste the same for the most part, unless you're getting like a radically flavored cigar. So that would be number one on the list, is don't buy too expensive of a cigar in the beginning. I would say stay in the $5 to $10 range. Don't get anything outside of that, because there's really no reason for it yet. Down the road, sure, but not yet. Number two on my list is getting the wrong type. And again, sometimes this can come from well-meaning friends, but a lot of times they'll say, oh, you've got to get this Tripo Maduro, whatever, it's dripping with oil, this thing has so much flavor, you're going to love it. No, you're going to probably vomit, because it's got so much nicotine, so much oil, it's such a heavy cigar, you're probably going to get sick from it. So start mellow. And so something like this, I just grabbed this out of my humidor, it's Legends by Drew Estate. This is a Connecticut wrapper. So for your first cigar smoking experience, I would highly recommend sticking with a light light-bodied cigar that has a Connecticut wrapper. So that's one good thing to know when you go to a cigar store or brick and mortar, and if they ask you, hey, what can I help you with? You can tell them I'm looking for a decent quality Connecticut light-bodied cigar. And that way, your first experience isn't going to be one that's going to get you sick, because you're then just going to go, oh, I hate smoking cigars, this sucks. So you've really got to start light, and so the Connecticut light-bodied cigar is going to be the way for you to go. The next thing is storing it wrong. So once you buy your cigar, and let's say you buy one because you're going to have something you're going to go to where you want to bring a cigar, but it's not for like a month. Well, what a lot of people will do that don't know is they'll just buy the cigar. It came in a little bag from the store or whatever, and they just set it on their desk, and that's it. And by the time you're going to go smoke it a month or two later, it's going to be all dried out. So at least what I would do, at least throw it into a little Tupperware container, cut the bottom of like a water bottle off, and just put a dampened like piece of paper towel in the bottom of that cup, and you've made your own little Tupperador. At least it's going to hold that cigar over it until you're ready to smoke it. And then I would stage it at the end. So then a couple days before you're going to smoke it, pull it out of that Tupperware container, and then you can sort of let it dry out a little bit to get rid of if it got over humidified, because you're not really controlling the humidity, but you're keeping it from drying out. So that would be the next thing is when you got your cigar, make sure you store it right so that when you do go to smoke it, it's not going to just be like a tinder going up, because it will dry out and it won't be as pleasurable of a smoke. And the goal here is for your first time to be a good experience. So then the next thing, this is where we can get into a little more demo, is cutting it wrong. So now you've gone through, let's go through a list. You've bought a not too expensive cigar. You've got the right type because it's a Connecticut and it's a light-bodied cigar. You've stored it properly for the month or two you've owned this cigar. Now you got to cut it, right? So you're going to take it out of the wrapper. Okay. Most people smell it, and this smells. These are really creamy. I'm not a huge fan of these Legends, but they are. I kind of forgot how good this thing smells. Good cigar. Anyway, so what I did was rather than a deep V and stuff I'm just using a regular guillotine cutter, because this might be something that sometimes even a place will give you for free. But I don't know how well it's going to zoom in on this. But if you notice, there's a line, and I'll point it out. It starts here. So from my fingernail up, there is a cap that has been wrapped around this cigar. And what that means is these big broad leaves that make the outer wrapper, they terminate up here, right? Well, if you didn't put a cap on, this thing would just unravel, right? So something has to seal this cigar from falling back apart. Okay, the cap does that. So they do a little piece of tobacco that they wrap around this. It's usually like 3 layers, because I can see at the top, I can see that seam, I can see another seam. So this basically has 2 seams on it. Okay, so as long as you cut from where my fingernail is above, you'll be okay. But what I've seen people do that are new is they'll cut way down here, because they don't understand that you're just supposed to just cut the tip of this off. You're not supposed to cut like a big straight cut down the... Your cut shouldn't look like the end of the cigar at the foot. It should really just be snipping the cap off. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is I'm going to place this in here. It's really hard to show you guys. You just place the very tip in and just do a real quick snip. Okay, brush that off. Set your cutter down. Okay, so now you can see. Sorry, my lighting's not fantastic, but you can see that I've cut well above. See, there's that cap line, and there's actually the second cut, the cap line. So I've actually cut just the very top of the cap off. But let me see if I can even find it for you. That's all I cut off. Just this little piece of the cap. Okay? That's all you need to cut off. That's going to ensure a decent draw, and we'll try that. Yeah, perfect draw. Really sweet. But what's going to not happen is have your cigar unravel. And I've told you this. In fact, I've mentioned this story, but I didn't really go much into it. I was actually at one of our motorcycle club chapter. We had a Christmas party. And someone was there that wasn't part of our chapter. I don't know who it was. He was sitting next to me because there's a big table of us smoking cigars. And he had pulled out the cigar. He was with, I think, a date. And it almost came across as if he was trying to impress her a little bit. And it didn't go well. So I guess he had stopped and he had bought this really expensive cigar. Clearly didn't know what he was doing. I watched him cut it. And before we could even stop the guy, he just went snip. And he cut it way down here. Then he's trying to smoke this thing, and this thing's just unraveling on him. And he's just cussing up a storm about this piece of crap cigar. He was like, spent all this money on the cigar. It shouldn't be falling apart. It was completely his fault. And so that's something I want you to avoid. Okay, so now that we've cut it, here's the next thing I'm going to warn you about, is lighting it wrong. And you're kind of thinking, well, how can you light a cigar wrong? And I'm not even talking about like going through the process of toasting the foot and things like that. I'm talking about where I will watch people just take their cigar, put it in their mouth, turn on their torch, and they are just, I mean, blasting the crap out of the cigar. And now here's why that's bad. There's a reason we will say we're toasting the foot, because you're trying to get a very light, slow, even ignition of your cigar. What you're trying not to do is scorch it. And when something burns, it often becomes bitter. And so what happens is if you put this in your mouth and you just hit this thing and you've just got this torch just flaming high as possible right on the end of your cigar, you're going to burn it. And what happens is now you're pulling that burnt, bitter smoke through your cigar, and you're literally changing the flavor of your cigar. That's not what you want to do. You want to make sure to do a really nice, take your time lighting a cigar. You got to remember, a lot of the reason we smoke cigars or even pipes is some of it is because of the process. And the process is sort of what is the relaxing part of it, the mechanics of smoking. It's not just the smoking. It's all the things around it, and lighting is one of those things. And so take your time, so don't throw this in your mouth, boom, and hit it and suck. You're just drawing on I just see this big flame, and I'm thinking to myself, man, all you're doing is you're turning that nice cigar into a bitter mess. So take your time. There's no rush, and you'll look less like a noob if you do this. So, as we've seen in my other videos, I'll just show you how I would light my cigar. I would hold it back, because the hottest part of the flame is right past the visible part of the flame. So, I'm not even, so for example, you see the distance I'm at? Okay. I only see flame to half the way to the cigar. The other half is invisible. I can't even see it. But you can see it's toasting the foot right away, right? So, it's showing you that this far away, okay, that far away, look, I'm still getting this thing to light almost by itself. Okay, that's how hot this thing is. So imagine if you're holding the flame right on your cigar, which I've watched people do over and over. I'm like, oh my God, you're not roasting a marshmallow, you know what I mean? So once you've toasted the foot and it's changed color, okay, now go ahead and again, keep the same distance. I don't need to be any closer than this, because if the flame's to here, I can see the blue flame to here, then all the way out here is probably, within this area is the hottest part that you don't even see. Okay? So if you ever can see the flame hitting your cigar, you're way too close. You just know that. Pull it another halfway, to me it should be whatever distance flame you see, go another same distance away with your cigar. And trust me, it'll light no problem. Watch. I was over half the distance away, and it's still lit. Okay, so there's no reason to torch the living crap out of your cigar. See, so that's kind of the lighting situation on that. Don't kill it. You don't need to burn the crap out of it. Give it some distance. And then I would rather have to touch up the light a few times than just scorch the crap, because I can see what people are trying to do is they're trying to make sure it's all lit. And they start going closer and closer and closer, and before you know it, they just have this fireball. Just make that process, drag that process out, make it longer. And then if you need to touch up your cigar, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. Okay. So next thing is not being prepared to smoke your cigar. You know, you're like, what the hell does that mean? I've got a lighter and I've got my cutter and I'm doing all the stuff, right? Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. You need to be prepared to smoke a cigar. Okay, and what that means is food and water. Okay, if you haven't had anything to eat and you've had nothing to drink and you're a little bit dehydrated and you go to smoke a cigar, you are going to turn green and get sick. Okay, so when people say that they feel sick from a cigar, do you actually know what they're talking about? Or may or may not. They may or may not know. What you're actually talking about is nicotine poisoning. Okay, so you gotta think an average cigar about this size has the same amount of nicotine in it as a pack of cigarettes, which is 20 cigarettes, right? But the difference is we're not inhaling. But you still get about 40% of the nicotine through your cheeks that you would, where you'd get like 100% through your lungs, right? So even though you're not inhaling, you're still getting a buttload of nicotine, right? Well, if you haven't had something to eat and you haven't had something to drink and you go to smoke a cigar, and then especially when you're accidentally and maybe inhaling a little bit of the smoke anyway, you're gonna feel like crap. And I did that one time. I went to a local like kind of a biker hangout and with a bunch of my buddies. I hadn't had anything to drink or eat. It was kind of midday. I think I just got up, got on the bike and went. And we were gonna probably eat and stuff there, but I never did. And I lit up this, it was a triple Maduro Camacho. Oh my God, I was so sick. I literally, not figuratively, literally, my face started turning green. I had to go lay down for about a half an hour. I thought you felt like nauseous and like seasick. It was a horrible experience. So if that was my first experience smoking a cigar, I would have been like, screw this action. I don't like cigars. They're horrible. Okay. Well, they're not. That was my own fault. I wasn't prepared. So when I say being prepared to smoke a cigar, I'm talking about food and drink. You know, be hydrated, have some food in your stomach, especially when you're new and your tolerance isn't built up for getting this massive hit of nicotine. You're going to get sick. So be prepared to smoke your cigar. Next thing, hitting it too often. I see this all the time. You know, a lot of times I think people that try a cigar for the first time maybe have historically been cigarette smokers. And I know with cigarette smoking, not that I did it, that I think I only smoked a year out of my entire life, and I didn't like it. Oh well, eventually realized I didn't like it and quit. I mean, I was like 18. This isn't like smoking a cigarette. This isn't like you're just trying to draw in between, you know, a break at work or something. You know, to me, cigarette smokers don't smoke, they don't appear to smoke cigarettes for the pleasure of it. It's more to get that nicotine hit that they are wanting because they're addicted to it at this point. A lot different to me than actually sitting down and enjoying a smoke. So, cigar aficionado, if you go back to the old days of where they used to actually list out like cigar etiquette, let's say, they would say to puff on your cigar between every 45 seconds and 1 minute. Not before. But I will watch people hit it and hit it. We used to call it hot boxing because this thing's just getting... So there's a lot of things happening when you do that. One, you're getting a lot of nicotine really fast and you're going to feel sick. Two, you're heating up your cigar because as you smoke this and the tobacco heats up from drawing the hot smoke through, it starts changing the flavor. And if you do it too often, it actually starts changing it to being a little bit bitter, and that's not what you want to do. So you really got to be careful not to hotbox it. So I would say that rule of don't hit a cigar more than every 45 seconds to a minute is probably a good starting point. So maybe play with that a little bit. Next thing is inhaling, either, as I put it for my own notes, either accidental or passively. So I think what happens partially too, like I just said, a lot of new cigar smokers I think maybe have been cigarette smokers. So I know I've had people make the comment to me, they're like, oh my God, it's so hard to get out of the habit of inhaling when I hit it. And I get that, it makes a lot of sense, because when you're smoking cigarettes, you just instinctively hit and you inhale it. With a cigar, you're not doing that. So it takes a while to make sure to train your reaction and your reflexes on that, is to not automatically start to inhale. You don't want to inhale cigar smoke, okay? You will get sick. Because you're, like I said, you're already getting 40% through your cheeks anyway, so you're getting a buttload of nicotine already. You don't want to get too much, because you will get nicotine poisoning. And you'll feel horrible, and it'll be a really bad experience, and you'll be like, cigar smoking sucks. And passively, I mean too, if you're like in a small room and there's 10 people smoking cigars, you're breathing a lot of secondhand smoke. So you are breathing more smoke than you think you are. And so that's kind of the passively getting it. Or even where I'm at now, if I'm hitting this and then I release and it's still all around my face and I'm breathing it again, you be cognizant that the smoke that's around you, you'll breathe back in if you take another breath. So it's oftentimes I'll turn my head and blow it like this. And I'll blow it away from me, like in the direction, if the wind's going this way, I'll blow it into the wind, so it's going to carry it away. I'm actually going out of my way to keep the smoke from lingering around my mouth area, so that when I take a hit and I blow out, and then I instinctively breathe in again to take another breath without the cigar, I'm now breathing in all sorts of smoke again. So kind of pay attention to getting the smoke away from you after you've taken the hit. Okay. Next thing is ashing too often. Now, there's debate about this in the cigar world. I've heard some people say that doesn't matter how often you ash, it doesn't make a difference. I've also heard people say that the ash actually can guard the cherry of the cigar and insulate it and keep your cigar lit longer. I've also, and I kind of believe that. I think that seems to be the case. I notice when I ash, if I've ashed often or the ash falls off, I think that the wind and cool air and stuff is getting to it, and maybe it does affect the cherry and it doesn't stay lit as well. I think I've noticed that. But I know a lot of us view too is the construction of the cigar can be based off of the ash. And so if you've got an ash that's always falling and falling and falling, that it could be an indication that it was a poorly wrapped cigar or it's poor quality. If you've got an ash that's that tall and it looks really good and it's really stout and you're like shaking it sideways and it's still staying, to me that shows the sign of a really well rolled and constructed cigar. A lot of this is conjecture. Whether that's all 100% true, I don't know, but that's at least what I've believed. That if I can have a really long, fat ash that stays on, to me that's a well-constructed cigar. And I've found that if I ash, that I end up relighting more often than if the ash is there. And I think what it is doing is it is insulating that cherry and keeping it going. So there's that. And the last thing, I put literally giving up too soon. And what I mean by that is you may have had a bad experience, or you may have got your first cigar and a lot of things could have happened. You didn't eat enough, and so you got a little bit sick. Or a friend of yours, and this is always good intended, but a lot of times people will say, oh, you should really try the cigar, and then you follow their advice, and then you end up getting sick because they recommended a really good cigar, but it was the wrong cigar for you for the first time. So you end up getting sick. So just understand that, like anything else in life, don't just smoke a cigar once and make your decision like I loved it or I hated it. I would say smoke a cigar maybe 3 times. And then after that, if you really determine, hey, this is just not for me, I don't like it, totally cool, I get it. But you might be surprised that first time, is kind of like the learning process. And then the second time, you're like, you kind of got the hang of it a little bit more. And then the third time, you're like, oh, I'm kind of getting this. Then you might go, well, this is actually pretty cool. So I would just suggest, don't smoke one and give up on it and say this sucked. Because you may have just had a wonky experience for the first time. I'd say at least give it a couple shots. And then if you don't like it, then at least you can say, hey, I tried several times, it's just not for me. and that's fantastic. That's, you know, at least to me, you've given it that effort to really understand, hey, I really don't like this, or hey, actually I really do like this. I think I'm going to continue trying this. So anyway, just to make it easy, I will run down my list really fast just to give you a recap. Number 1, don't buy too expensive of a cigar in the beginning. 2, don't buy the wrong type of cigar. Make sure it's a light-bodied Connecticut. 3, don't store it wrong so that when you go to smoke it for the first time, it's not like smoking a dry bundle of tinder. 4, don't cut it wrong. Make sure to cut it so that it doesn't unravel. Stay above that line of the cap. 5, don't light it wrong. Don't torch the crap out of this thing. Give it plenty of room, give it plenty of distance, and light it slowly. 6, be prepared. That means have some food in your system, have some water in your system, be hydrated. Okay, don't smoke a cigar with it on an empty stomach and you're dehydrated. You'll probably get sick. Let's see, where are we at? 7, don't hit it too often. Maybe follow the 45-second to a minute rule and see how that works out for you. Don't hotbox it. I'm sorry, I'm off here. No, that was right. 7, 8. Yeah, 8. I didn't number these, so I'm trying to keep track in my head. And again, a lot of traveling. I'm a little out of it. 8. Don't inhale the smoke, whether on purpose or on accident or passively. Just really be cognizant of where the smoke is. If you're a cigarette smoker, try to get out of that habit of hitting it and instinctively inhaling. You're not going to be happy. Number 9, don't ash too often. I would say let the ash build up. If the ash falls off naturally, that's fine. But I would say, I see people all the time that, I mean, the ash is tiny, right? Look how my ash is not that long. And I see people flicking and flicking, trying to get the ash off. I'm like, this isn't a cigarette. You don't need to ash it every 5 seconds. It's okay to let the ash just sit there. Let it fall off on its own. And finally, number 10, not giving up too soon. So if you have a bad experience, I get it. I would still say maybe give it another shot. I would always say that, even my kids, I tell them that, not related to cigar smoking, but with anything in life. Don't just try something one time. Try it a few times. And that way, at least you can make a really educated decision of like, hey, I've tried this several times and I really don't like it. Then at least you've got that, you know, rather than saying, well, I gave it a shot once and No, give it a few goes and then really determine that you don't like it rather than just giving up right away. So anyway, that's my 10 items to watch out for the new cigar smoker. Hopefully that's helpful. And now that I'm back, I will be back to making videos regularly again, and look out for some new stuff that I got some cool ideas from my cousins in Missouri. I'll probably do one like Jake had asked about, like fishing with cigars, because there's some myths around that. You know, a lot of people say if you want to keep the bugs away from you, smoke a cigar while you're fishing and stuff. And I tried that, and we'll go over things like that. Did that work? Did it not work? Anyway, so that's what I got for you today. Glad to be back in front of the camera to make you guys some content, because I enjoy it, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. So definitely like, comment, subscribe. And again, Eric at SoCal Cigars, and I will see you on the next video, which will be coming out pretty soon. Have a great day. Give it a shot. Follow this list if you're new, and really determine if you're going to like this or not. And I think if you give it a fair shake, you'll probably enjoy it. It's pretty cool. Anyway, see you next time. Later on.